All right. Well, welcome everyone. Welcome to the first of what I think will be an exciting series of webinars that we're starting at Radiant. With this one really focusing on something very close to my heart and I know to Chris's heart, who I'll introduce in a second, which is continuous improvement, but also designing for continuous improvement. Um, so Chris Butterworth is joining us today, who I think is probably a new voice to many of you. Not well known, Chris, in the legal world, but I'm going to get to intros in a second. Um, and maybe just some quick housekeeping for our time together. We're going to try to stick to 45 minutes today. We'll allocate some time at the end for questions. So I really want to encourage, if you have any questions, anything jump to mind as Chris and I explore this conversation, please just post it in the Q&A and we'll pick those questions up, try to do 10 minutes at the end to answer some of them. Obviously, Chatham House rules around any Q&A. We'll record the session and make it available except for the Q&A bit at the end. And so can share it with you once we wrap up. Just a few intros then about myself. My name is Ian Teague. I oversee delivery at Radiant Law, which really means I split my time between solutioning things with clients. I used to be one of the solicitors here doing lots and lots of deals, working closely with clients to solution, and then operationally making sure our team of lawyers are just doing a fantastic job doing the work, but also improving how the work is done. And Radiant, what we're about, we're an ALSP, alternative legal services provider. And a bit differently for a law firm is our purpose is to create great relationships. And we do that really through contracting and negotiating lots and lots of deals for scaling companies and large corporates, really using the right blend of people, process, and technology to do that. And so our guest today is Chris Butterworth. Welcome, Chris.
Thanks.
Chris is an international speaker, a Shingo faculty fellow, and there's a lot about Shingo that I really encourage you to read separately up about after this webinar. Chris has run a global consultancy for about 2 decades, right, Chris?
Yes, right.
Passionate about continuous improvement, and really, I think over the last few years has written a number of award-winning books. Chris, I haven't read them all. I have read some of them. I do plan to read the others. A strong recommendation to everyone on this call to have a look at them. I found the content really engaging and very practical as well. Always walked away with a number of tools and ideas of things to implement. So welcome, Chris. Really looking forward to this conversation. And why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and kickstart things for us?
Sure. Many thanks, Ian, and welcome everybody. Yeah, very briefly, I first got into continuous improvement many years ago, over 35 years ago, when I was a senior leader at Jaguar Cars, and we had the opportunity to build one of the first model factories in the UK based on the Toyota production system, or the thinking people system, as they call it. And so that became my passion, and then I spent 20 plus years leading a global consultancy business, or working with some of the major organizations around the world, such as Mars and Coca-Cola, and actually a lot of non-manufacturing organizations, such as the Royal Australian Air Force and Commonwealth Bank, which is the biggest bank in Australia at the time, over 64,000 people, and also BHP, which is one of the biggest mining companies in the world with over 75,000 people. But also with a lot of smaller organizations as well, because I think I actually sold my consultancy business about 5 or 6 years ago to focus on writing, as Ian mentioned. And all my books are kind of handbooks on how to implement different aspects of continuous improvement. And we'll touch on one of them today because I think it's very relevant for people that are looking about where to start. And I know that Ian and Radiant have used it a lot as well. So probably that's by way of a good enough background. Ian mentioned Shingo. So the Shingo Institute at Utah State University is based on the work of a gentleman called Shigeo Shingo, who was given an honorary doctorate by the university for his work in improvement, and he has also written about before he passed away, about 20 books in this field. Very, very honored gentleman in this area. So the Shingo Institute is the home of the Shingo Prize. The Shingo Prize is awarded to organizations that are deemed to have embedded a culture of continuous improvement for a minimum of 3 years. And it's recognized as kind of the Academy Award for continuous improvement. So I also have the honor to examine organizations for that prize. And one of the organizations that I'd probably talk about as an example would be one of the teams in Commonwealth Bank, who were the first financial institute in the world to get a Shingo Award, and they got a silver several years ago. And I think it's useful to just talk about the way they went about implementing improvement in an area that had never really been done in this way before. Like a lot of legal teams, in-house legal teams, the customers for many of the teams were internal. Never actually met the external customers. They were serving each other. And one of the things that Shingo teaches us is that if we want ideal results, we need ideal behaviors.
Mm.
Now, we'll come on to behaviors more as we go through this session, but I wanted to start with the idea of ideal results. And what do we mean by ideal results? And the key starting point for that is to sit back and ask ourselves a question. Who is our customer? Or who are our customers? Because we can't really define what those ideal results are on our own.
Mm. Mm.
And the danger is we might think that we know, but those ideal results, the things that the customer really values, change very fast, constantly changing. And what I see as an opportunity for many internal teams, not just in the legal sector, but anyone providing services internally, is to sit back and say, well, who are our customers then? And do we really understand what they value most from us? And because there's a danger we get stuck into doing the same things we've always done, or we think that we understand what they value, but there's a really useful technique, which because you cannot really understand customer value by doing surveys. We tend to fall back on interactions with understanding what the customer values by using surveys. And at best, they will measure satisfaction. They'll tell us what the customer thinks about how we're performing today and the things we do today. What they don't measure at all is what are we not doing. And you can't really do that with a survey. So I'm not saying don't use them, but be aware they are limited. They're just going to measure what we do now. And if we're lucky, we might get a reasonable response rate, but often we don't. So what it needs is a conversation. Identify the customer, have a conversation with them, get them to identify, say, the top 3 things. What are the top things you really value from what we provide, from the services we provide, or the services we could provide, and have it as an open discussion. And there's various techniques you can use, and you can rank what they say and say, oh, okay, are we better, the same, or worse than what your expectations are? And that's quite a simple technique. Where we are better than, that's great. We want to know what it is that's good and do more of. Where we're only the same as what they expect, or even worse, then that's a fantastic way to think about, okay, well, what could we do to be even better than what you expect? So you're already starting this discussion from a position of a bit of humility, really, that says, okay, I really want to know what it is you want from us. What we talk about in the book that tells this story is a case study of the team that won the prize in the Commonwealth Bank. It's called 4+1. What they did after these conversations, they created what they called a customer value proposition. So each team had a statement of what was the key things that the internal customer really valued, and what did they how did they describe that in words that the customer agreed with? Simple sentence. And they used that in many ways. So that's the start point. Who are our customers? Do we understand what they really value? Um, when we do that, I think the next thing is to make it visible in some way.
Mm.
One of the keys to creating an environment of improvement is to know what to focus on and to know how we're performing against key targets and goals. So the phrase that's most commonly used is measures that matter.
Mm.
Now, who do they matter to? Well, they should matter to the customer and they should matter to the team. There's both. Um, and the idea is that what we do is we make those measures, the things that matter, visible in some way. Now, if you're all in an office and it's convenient, you can put them on the wall and start having conversations around them. If we're working virtually, we can create them online and have virtual conversations around them. It really
Mm.
does depend on what works for each team. But what we do is we start small with experiments. We don't try and make it perfect with 20 things on there and it don't do anything until it's absolutely 100%.
Yeah.
No, start with 2 or 3 things. Let's start just collecting some information and some data about how are we performing against the things the customer really values. It might be lead time. It might be how many touches there has to be. It might be something around how effective or valued our advice is. We don't really know without asking them, get them to just articulate it in some way. But there'll also be measures related to the team. So it might be like,
Mm.
how are we doing as a team? Have we got some behaviors that we've agreed and we're sticking to those behaviors? Is there anything that's stopping us from doing a good job? Anything that's frustrating us in getting the value to the customer that they want? They're really good conversations. So what the idea is, you have something that has your measures that matter. You have some
Mm.
targets or aspirations against those, and then you
Mm.
meet on a regular basis to review them. Are we hitting the targets? Yes or
Mm.
no? Were we not? What can we do about it? So that might be a good place to pause here and then just maybe describe one of how some of that visual systems that I'm talking about there has had any impact at Radiant.
Yeah, Chris, that book 4+1, I think you introduced it to us 3, 4 years ago.
Probably about 3, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. And I think Alex and I read it, really liked it, and thought this will be easy. We'll just implement this quick sticks and we'll transform everything. I think we're still very much on that journey. That piece of making it, we'll take those in turn. What matters to our customers. That was really good. So what we did is we went and read all the customer feedback we had got over the last 5 years and distilled it into what matters to our customers. And I think uh, we hadn't defined all our customers at that point. And I think we then split out and said, well, what matters to the legal teams we work with are these 5 things, actually. That's what we flushed out. But they're not our only customer. It's also the procurement teams we work with, and it's the sales teams we work with. And
Mm.
they had different objectives, right? Different goals, other things. And sometimes they conflicted, right? We
Yeah.
had
Yeah.
sales teams saying, just sign the thing. Legal teams, right, say, well, make sure we sign the right thing. Um, and so that was interesting to break down the customers, what matters to them. And we now have a customer. I think we call it a client value proposition.
Yeah.
Because lawyers have clients rather than customers, you
Sure.
know. And then we started rolling out visual management boards, which is, I think, your point is of make it visible,
Yeah.
what matters. One of the things was speed of turnaround time really matters to sourcing teams to make sure they get the right thing uh, bought and they start realizing the savings early. So to get that deal turning quickly matters to sourcing teams. But it even matters more to sales teams because that means getting sales revenue in the door. And so that's a measure it's become really important over the last 5 years is turnaround time at Radiant. When I joined 10 years ago, that was not on the radar. I mean, it was important to be faster than competitors, but we hadn't quite linked how important it was to our customers, and we weren't talking about it all the time. Now it's on the radar. It's on every board. Those boards were just Google Sheets in the beginning as we figured it out. 5, 6 years later, we've built stuff now that we can trust more. Yeah, but that's absolutely become core to how our teams think and operate now.
It's part of your operating system now
Yeah.
with regular, and you don't just have the things on the wall or on a spreadsheet. What makes them useful is a drumbeat of conversations reviewing them about what are we going to do? So what?
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah.
Otherwise, they just become wallpaper. No, so
Yeah.
the 4+1 is actually four key habits for improvement. The first one is that making it visual. The second one is having conversations around what it's telling us. The third one then is have we got a standard way of doing stuff?
Mm,
What's our standard work?
mm,
Why? Well, because how can we improve something if we've got a baseline to work from? Yeah, so
mm,
and I'm not suggesting go out and standardize everything, but what comes apparent when you start using the visual indicators is that the first question, the first question to ask it when something goes wrong or not achieving it says, well, did we follow our standard?
yeah.
And when the answer is, well, we haven't got one, okay, then it's time to get one then, because
Yeah.
we can't train people to if we've not got a standard. We can't measure our performance against effectively if we've not got a standard, and we don't know whether we're just being lucky or we're achieving it because
Mm,
it's working as it should do.
mm,
Um, Now, if
yeah.
the answer, so if we think we've got a standard and we've still got problems, still not hitting target, and that's where the fourth habit comes in, and that's about continuous improvement. Okay,
Mm,
how do we improve the process or system to make it even better? And so they're the four. They are relatively straightforward and they fit together well. We'll talk a little bit about the plus one later in a few minutes, but plus one is the leader habit of checking, making sure everything's working as it should, and going talking to people and coaching
mm, mm,
that activity. But the one of the key things is that we start having conversations based on facts. So that's what we're
yes.
doing when we're collecting this information, because we find that unless we do that, we can have hours and hours of long discussions. We have loads and loads of meetings, and we get little output from them in terms of real results that make a difference.
Mm,
And what we see when organizations put good, effective visual management in place, the amount of time spent in meetings reduces dramatically. It's one of the
interesting.
tests as whether they're working or not,
Mm,
because that's when we identify what we need to fix on. That's how we prioritize what's important,
mm,
because most often people find they've got more things to do than time to do them.
yeah.
So how do we decide what's the most important things, and how do we make sure we're keeping those visible? Yeah, so we can say, yeah, look, we've got all these 10 things. The three we're working on now are these three, and we're going to get to those next. And so, but it
Mm,
gives
mm,
it some measure of control if you make it visible. So there are lots of advantages. I don't know anyone who's been able to embed an improvement culture without the use of visualization. It's key.
interesting.
It's key.
Mm, mm,
Um, so we put those in place, and this is one of the key things here is we can put all those mechanisms in place, but they'll only have limited effectiveness unless we also think about behaviors. So I
yeah.
mentioned earlier that one of the key insights from the Shingo teaching is that ideal results require ideal behaviors. So we have to start thinking about, well, what does that mean then? If this is the results we're after, how do we need to behave as a team with each other in order to achieve those results? And you can start very simply. It could be a team that have created the first visual board and visual management system. They might just agree as themselves, okay, what's the behaviors we want to exhibit when we have the meetings around these boards or talking about these
Mm,
boards? The behaviors might be, well, we'll actively listen to each other. We'll be supportive. There is no bad idea. And these are just about what we call establishing some behavioral norms. And don't worry if they're not perfect at the start. Like we can't. We a lot of this is about experimenting with things and finding things that work. Implementing continuous improvement is an ongoing experiment.
Mm. Mm.
And there's a very simple model which helps with that, and it's simply called. It's from Deming. It simply says plan, do, check, adjust. So I
Mhm.
plan something, I have a go at it, I review. Did I get what I expected? Yes or no? If yes, implement it, do more of it. If not quite, then I adjust it and try again. Keep going through that constant cycle of improvement. Now, that again could be a behavior that we encourage. We want people to be actively thinking and demonstrating they're doing plan, do, check, adjust. But what we find when people start thinking about behaviors is the conversation changes dramatically.
Interesting.
Because the other thing we do about behaviors is we say the behaviors that are not acceptable.
Yes.
So we're actually, what we're doing is managing the culture. The
Mm.
only way you can manage culture is to be really clear on the behavioral expectations and encourage people to have conversations about those behaviors. You, you cannot have a culture of improvement if it's driven by one or two people. It has to be everyone collaborating to create that environment, in which case you need agreement on the behaviors so that people can hold each other accountable at every
Mm.
level for the right behaviors.
Mm. Yeah, I remember did one of those Shingo workshops, and it was a kind of virtual session where you spoke to one of those participant organizations, and it was US hours, so it was the middle of the night, doing this, 9 to 5 East Coast workshop, and then you had to go speak to some engineering team in Boston. And the last thing you wanted to do is have your video on because I mean, it's just late and tired, worked all day now on webinar all night. And remember the one engineer said, "Could everyone please turn their videos on? That's what we do around here." Hold up. I'm paying to be here, and you're telling me what I must do. And it was so good because he said,
Yeah.
we all dial out and we don't engage when our video is turned off. And so we've decided at our organization, we want everyone to have their video on because then we all
Yes.
dial, take yourself off
Yeah.
mute. And it was just the standard. And it wasn't a senior guy
Sure.
saying this. He was
No,
one of the
no.
more junior members on the team.
Yeah.
Everyone backed it up and we all had to turn our cameras on.
Yeah.
Um, but it was so good. It was clearly something small that the whole team owned
Yeah.
and that it found helpful as a behavior for them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's a great example, and yeah, thanks for sharing that. I'd forgotten that example. Yeah, and it's and these don't have to be earth-shattering things. That
Yeah.
small things can make a huge difference. I remember one team in the bank. They would come in the morning. They would spend 2 or 3 minutes every morning just getting things open that they needed. And when you looked at the desktop, it had like 50, 60. Some people had 100 different icons on the desktop, and they needed 4 every day. And I got to
Right.
hunt for them. So they actually just agreed a standard that everyone would have the 4 icons they need every day in the same place in the top. I think it was the top left-hand corner of the screen. And when turned on computer, they're all there. Everyone owns them. It saved a couple of minutes every day for 1,000 people.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It makes a huge difference to us doing some simple things like that. Yeah,
What's
that's
this?
an example of simple standard work.
Yeah. Chris, that story I think you've told me about the team who said if they were late, you had to buy.
Yes, so that's it's another simple example. So um, behavior that was they've set up an agreement that they'll have this meeting once a week initially. Sometimes can be a bit more, but typically depending on the work cycle, let's say once a week. And they agreed it'd be 15 minutes maximum. And people just pitching up 5 minutes late and having to start the meeting again. So they said, hang on, can we agree? We've agreed this is really important. We want to agree that we'll all be on time. Oh yeah, we'll all be on time. Next meeting, people are late again. Said, right, okay, this is not working. We're gonna put something in place. So they agreed it, they discussed it. What they agreed was if you were late for a meeting, for a meeting, more than 1 minute late, you got a cross against your name. If you got 3 crosses against your name, you had to buy cake for everybody in the team.
So
And I
good.
was looking at this thing. I could see it had not been filled in for about 2 months. And I said, what's going on? So, well, we just wanted to show you, but within a couple of months, we didn't use it anymore because no one was late again. Two people had to buy a cake. No one was late again. And now we don't bother measuring it because we don't need to. So we're going to
Yeah.
move on and measure something else instead.
Yeah.
So the other thing is you can have some fun with these things.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
In the jargon for that, it's called an example of what's called a key behavioral indicator.
Mm.
So what we tend to focus on is the KPIs, the performance, and those will be things in the measures that matter that the customer's looking for, like Ian mentioned on the lead time there. But we might say if we want to achieve that lead time, what are some of the key behaviors that we need in the team in order to achieve that turnaround time? And then we can think about, well, is there a way of giving us an indicator? And often it's not a measure, it's more like, is it red or green or just isn't it, that says, yes, we've got the right behaviors we need to help achieve that ideal result. So, because ideal
Mm.
results need ideal behaviors.
Mm.
And just measuring results is too late. They've already happened. It's like trying to
Yeah.
drive the car only looking in the rear view mirror. What I need is some lead indicators. So the behavioral indicators are the best lead indicators you can possibly have.
Yeah.
If you get the behaviors, you'll get the results.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it makes so much sense when you play it back that way. And I think KBI, I think people latch onto that and it just makes sense. Yeah, I need a KPI. I need to. I
Uh,
found it. What made sense for me is I'm trying to improve my marathon time, and it started with okay, running through winter. Um, I need to wake up at a certain time, and then I realized I need to lay out my running kit the night before because that'll make that behavior makes it easier to wake up and get dressed and go for a run. And then I realized actually it's just my bedtime, actually. You know what I mean? The behavior just changed over and
yep,
over again as I
yep,
worked out what would be better here to get to that
absolutely.
result.
Yep.
Um,
You
so,
try it, you
yeah,
experiment with it. It works
yeah,
and it might work for a short period of time. And then you say, okay, well, what's the next level I've got to
right.
aim for? Exactly the right way to do it.
Chris, can you talk a little bit more about PDCA?
Yes. So plan, do, check, act is very much a mindset, but also a simple methodology for helping us to track improvements ideas and helping us to track projects as well. Not any project really fits very well into plan, do, check, act. So
Hmm.
we'll plan to do something and we do it. Now that's quite common. We see that many teams are pretty good, not too bad at that. Some teams just do without planning, but many teams
Yes.
have a bit of a plan and do. But fewer teams actually do a proper check and review. So we actually find, and this happens with a lot with when we think we've fixed a problem. So, oh,
Right.
well, we'll do this. We might do a bit of plan, we'll do, and then we move on to the next problem. And then before we know it, the problem we thought we'd fixed has come back again.
Yes.
Because what we didn't do is a proper analysis using some proper root cause, but also we didn't check whether that what we thought would work, the solution that took it away, whether that was valid or not. So we didn't do the check and we didn't do the adjust. And that's what we
Okay.
see as a big common gap is people doing plan and do, constantly getting into vicious cycles of firefighting
Yeah.
because they're not really checking have we properly fixed the issue or not. And you might not. It's quite common. We think we've done it and we might have partially fixed it. So we've got to get into the mindset of going through that cycle several times.
Yeah, and over again, right?
Yeah.
I've certainly found with I don't know if I don't think this is just a legal thing, but certainly it's true that lawyers are trained that there's like winners and losers, in any kind of negotiation or any lawsuit. It's one party win. It's not even quite like that, but and so the concept of a plan, do, check, act. Oh, we got a poll. Okay, while that poll runs, just explore this question. Um, means you recognize that some things haven't worked and you kind of have an honest conversation with yourself and with your team. Like that thing that we planned and did not work for whatever reason. And so uh, that takes humility to do that. And
Yep.
and actually, I think quite quickly, once you get into it, realize that's a strength. I planned, I did something, I checked, I then learned that that did work or that
Absolutely.
didn't work. And then I did it again, and then I did something
Yep.
else, and I changed. And it's sometimes a zillion experiments before you're actually getting to, okay, that worked,
Yep.
which I did not think would be the thing up front. And I
Yep.
had to go through this. Yeah.
I think it's a
Um,
really good point because this whole thing about this experiment, this mindset of experiment. So if we're in a mindset where we try an improvement, it fails, and people get in trouble, we don't
yes.
get any improvements. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And some of the best companies actually reward learning rather than focus on failure. So it's not a failure because I'm not interested in the failure. I'm interested in the mindset of we tried something. Let's celebrate that we tried something and what did we learn from it, and do better next time.
Yeah.
Because what we have to remember is that very, very few people come to work to deliberately do a bad job.
Yes. Yeah.
That's almost everybody comes into work wanting to do a good job.
Hmm.
So when mistakes happen, it's not very rare that they're deliberately done as mistake. No one's deliberately done that. So we have to think about how do we change the process to make it hard for those mistakes to happen? And
Hmm.
that's really not about the senior leader to come and say, right, do this, and this. It's more about sitting down with a team. In fact, I give you, a couple of examples of organizations at prize level where the senior leader would go to someone and say, Ian, I'm really sorry we gave you a process that allowed that mistake to happen.
Mm.
Can you join us in the problem solving team to work out how we can change the process to make it impossible for that mistake to happen again?
Yes.
When you do that, you're taking away blame completely and you're encouraging people to actually take accountability because if you blame them, become defensive. If you take away the blame, they become accountable and want to be change, put their ideas forward to make it work better next time.
Mm.
It's really important mindset.
Because I'm just so conscious of time. Conversation has moved so quickly. And we've got some poll results that have come through,
Great.
which I'll just share. Hopefully everyone. Oh, well, let me speak to the first one. Well, the question was, what's the biggest blocker to smarter delivery in your legal team? And we got 58% of people saying lack of time.
Yeah.
Is that what you see generally
Yeah,
when?
and I don't think that's unique to legal. I think that's very common because we've got lots and lots of things to do. So sometimes one of the key skills here is called reflection, really.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to sit back and say, well, what what is my role? What is my job? And this is classic from leaders actually, always saying that we're too busy, and then we sit back and reflect. What are they doing? They're actually doing the job of the people who work for them a lot of the time.
Yes.
That's so I think a start point is what am I busy on? Am I
Mhm.
busy on the things that I should be busy on? And that might need a little bit of thinking and reflection beforehand to say, well, what is my role? In the job I'm in, what are the key things I really should be doing? And that might be coaching, it might be teaching, it might be liaising with the customer. Um, but whatever it is, try and very roughly quantify it and say, you know what, because what you're trying to do, you're establishing a baseline.
Yeah.
What should I be doing and what am I doing? And unless you've got that current state and that future state plan, you'll never change. It'll never change.
Mm.
So
Mm.
this is what I'd like to be doing. This is what I am doing. Then I can step by step saying, well, what is it that's eating my time?
Yes.
I've got this thing it's not in my things I should be doing, and yet I'm sucking up loads of my activity. What can I do about it? You've got to break it down in that way and get to some real facts to do, and then you can tick them off one by one. You cannot fix it all at once, but
Yeah.
there are different. It might be something you need to delegate. It might be something that says, actually, you know what? I need to train someone else to do that because I shouldn't be doing that anymore. It might be that you're suddenly finding, and this is very common, your life consists of 7.5 hours of meetings and half an hour to do the work.
Yeah. I think we all feel that, right?
So you then look at the meetings and say, right, has each meeting got a clear purpose? What
Hmm.
is the output we want from this meeting? Has it got a very clear timed agenda? And another good question to ask yourself is, why am I at that meeting?
Yeah.
Because what's happened, I've noticed this, especially as the virtual world has grown, it's easy for having 20 people plus on them. It's easy for people to go to meetings. So we just go to more meetings. it's not increasing effectiveness at all or efficiency.
Mm.
Or it's the vital few people that need to be at that meeting. And let's stick to a timed agenda with clear outputs. You find that you get a lot less meetings and more time.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. We have 9 minutes left, and so I do want to make time for questions. I know I've covered a lot of ground already, Chris. I've got a bunch of questions, but I want to make space for everyone attending to ask any questions. So, if anyone wants to do so, Enzo can facilitate asking a question to Chris. Post it in the chat or the Q&A, or even just raise your hand.
I can't see anyone, unfortunately, so I'm not sure
Yeah,
if.
no problem.
Ali did not get us.
Okay, no questions. Am I missing something, Enzo?
No, nothing.
All right. Chris, on those polls, there was let me just get to the first one. There was another question there, which was a question which was, what's your preferred way to kickstart change? Most of the people attending said big picture strategy first. And does that, I mean, I'm sure you'll
Well, it's
agree
a
with that.
choice, It's a
It is a
choice,
choice, right?
and the big, you can have, I think if we're looking at a corporate change, then we got to start. We might want to start
Yeah.
big. But if I'm looking at a team change within an organization, then it's back two things really. Is are we clear on who our customers are, and
Yes.
what is our purpose as a team? And that's those two are really good. They come together. I mean, I think it's quite dangerous to define your purpose as a team unless you're clear on who the customer is.
Yes.
They've done, but if you're really clear on who the customer is, what they value, then you can articulate what your purpose is as a team to help deliver what they're looking for. And I would avoid getting overcomplicating it. The conversation about who are our customers can become very, very complicated. But
Yeah.
start with who's our main customer then? Who takes up 70% of our time? Let's not try and fix everything at once. Who's the main thing we need? What's the main thing we need to focus on first? And I think if you can get those two things clear, then that's a good start point because you then say, okay, we can now talk about what are the measures that matter. They matter to achieving our purpose, matter to the customer. Let's start agreeing on 2 or 3 things that we could measure that we can track our performance against. Because we don't really know what we need to improve
Yes.
unless we're clear on what we're trying to achieve and where we stand against that.
And then we can try things. I was just reflecting on this, the first question of people not having enough time. We all feel that. But I think sometimes when you are clear about this is what we're trying to achieve, this is what matters, the little things we can try, which is improvement, right? We're trying PDCA, trying things to make it better for our teams and our customers. They could be short and simple, and you could try one thing this hour. You could try one thing today. You could try one thing this week. They don't need to be these massive, massive experiments with hours and hours and hours of planning. We do have those, those are important initiatives, but small experiments, right?
I think so, because the danger is that when in an environment we're all so busy, you haven't got time to run huge improvement projects. You've got to create that time in the first place. So let's what's going to give me an hour this week? Which meetings do I not need to go to?
Yes.
Oh, I've now got an hour. Where? What am I going to use that hour for? Thinking about improvement, reflecting on what I can do better, planning on what else I can do, or I'm going to just do more firefighting.
Yeah.
You've got to be disciplined in how you're going to allocate the time that you free up as well.
We had such an interesting experiment last year. One of our teams said that they wanted to make sure that everyone was really in a kind of remote environment where your screen's just happening to you, the work never ends. They said, we really want to make sure that a team is getting time off during the day to have lunch and just get like a mental break, because these are knowledge workers, you're lawyers, you're focusing for long periods. And so they said the behavior is a lunch break, which you have to take a photo of your lunch. You might post it during lunch, during this break.
Yeah.
Quickly post it, and it can't be at your desk.
No, you can't. We can't have a burger in one hand
Yes.
and hand on the
Yeah.
keyboard, the other hand on the keyboard.
So they had this behavior, which I must be honest, had I known that that was their experiment, I would have said, I don't think it's really going to help. I would probably have shot it down, to be honest. And anyway, it happened. It also so happened that that month was the busiest ever work stream for that team. They had the most work they had ever received, most number of contracts that needed to be negotiated by quite a margin. I think it was 20% higher than any other month. And yet their turnaround times didn't take a knock at all.
Yeah.
So they continued to deliver on time, and the team emerged happier.
Yeah.
And it was so interesting that the behavior was grab lunch away from your desk. You know what I mean? But they came up with it.
And what they did there, they demonstrated they cared about each other.
Yeah.
Feel valued. And one of the key things that makes a huge difference to whether you really are performing and it's a great place to work is the levels of engagement in an organization. One of the key elements of that is people feel cared about, they feel valued. It's not the only one, but it's really important. The second one is that they have a clear purpose and they understand how they're contributing to that purpose. They're not difficult things to do, but if we put them in place, what we see is average engagement levels, which very sadly are around 25% around the world at the moment in work, shoot up. If we do some simple things on connecting people to a purpose, have a good relationship with their immediate boss, and the organization demonstrates that they care about people's learning and development. You do those three things, you get massive discretionary effort.
Amazing. Chris, thank you. That has been so engaging. One of the things you and I spoke about beforehand was what's your next step, right? After something like this. I always think that's so helpful to think about, is the next step I need to go speak to my manager, or I speak to my team, or I share this recording. We'll make sure this recording is shared with everyone so that others can learn from this. Do I try something? Do I reflect on our purpose? There's so many next steps that one could take. Or maybe I just need to think about this some more, or read a book, or go listen to something else. But there's always a next step to try and take something forward. Chris, thank you. I know, just to everyone, I know that Chris just shared before this started that his daughter is in labor with the first grandchild on the way. So he's very kindly made sure he still made this webinar. And we got through it, Chris. You haven't been called away to the hospital just yet.
Not
So
yet. No.
thank you for your time, Chris. Really,
it's been a pleasure, and I hope everyone enjoyed it and got something out of it.
Brilliant. And just to everyone, we're running another webinar next week, same time. Next week, I'll be speaking with Sophie Spur, who's Associate General Counsel at HSBC, and slightly different topic. We're going to be exploring partnerships, and that's working with ALSPs, how HSBC has really succeeded working with partners to achieve their goals for their customers. So thanks, everyone. Thanks again, Chris.
Thank you very much.
Speak soon.